Dude, the Supreme Court completely flipped on us. Literally the other day, they just put a stay on Judge Xinis' order.
I regret to announce that the Chief Justice, during the course of the hearing, Chief Justice Roberts, has indefinitely blocked the court order requiring the return of Kilmar Garcia.
And then in the same day, we had this ruling from the Supreme Court as well.
The Supreme Court has lifted a federal judge's order that blocked the Trump administration from using a centuries-old wartime law called the Alien Enemies Act to deport migrants to El Salvador.
Which seemed like a clear message to the lower courts. Hey, you're overstepping your bounds. What are you guys doing? Sit down. Then just a couple of days later, the Supreme Court completely reverses itself.
The Supreme Court has ordered the federal government to facilitate the return of a Maryland man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador.
No, stop lying. Even NPR admitted that it was an informant that let them know that this guy was a gang member. And we're going to dig into some more documents related to that later on in the video.
A federal district court originally ordered the return of Kilmar Garcia to the United States by Monday night. However, Chief Justice John Roberts paused that to give justices more time to look at the order. Attorneys for the Justice Department admitted Garcia's deportation was a, quote, administrative error. But the DOJ claims the 29-year-old father has ties to the MS-13 gang. Melissa Quinn is a politics reporter for CBSNews.com. She joins us now on the phone. And Melissa, there's been so much push and pull on all of this. What does this ruling today mean?
Well, I want to go back really quick, if I may, to the order that the district court entered on Friday. It said that the government had to facilitate and effectuate the return of Mr. Garcia to the U.S. from Salvadoran custody. So what we're seeing now from the Supreme Court is really look at that phrase, facilitate and return, and effectuate the return. As to the facilitate part, the Supreme Court is saying, yes, the district court was right. The government has to facilitate his release from Salvadoran custody. But it's the second part, that effectuate word, where the Supreme Court is now saying to the district court, you need to go back and you need to hold more proceedings and you need to clarify what exactly that means.
What happens next, though, for Kilmar Garcia?
Well, the Supreme Court is saying here that the Trump administration needs to take those steps to secure his release from the Salvadoran prison. The court, however, did not set a deadline or a time frame for exactly when that has to take place. And as I mentioned earlier, it did call for further proceedings. The court said that the district court needed to clarify that directive, but it also said that the government needed to be prepared to share what it could about the steps it's taken and the prospects of further steps involving his deportation.
So I'm listening to that and I'm thinking, yeah, it sounds like the issue where the violation of the executive branch's Article 2 powers came from was specifically when the lower courts set a deadline to the return of Garcia. Like, what is the United States going to force El Salvador to do something? You can't, by judiciary, dictate foreign relationships with other countries. So it makes sense that you could rule, hey, you guys are responsible. You must facilitate this return, but you can't dictate, hey, you have to force El Salvador to initiate that return. And now that I'm piecing that together, it puts the DOJ's response in perspective, because at first I thought it was a little weird. Check this out.
From the Department of Justice, Josh Gerstein at Politico as well. The DOJ saying this, quote, as the Supreme Court correctly recognized, it is the exclusive prerogative of the president to conduct foreign affairs. By directly noting the deference owed to the executive branch, this ruling once again illustrates that activist judges do not have the jurisdiction to seize control of the president's authority to conduct foreign policy. So this case really set up a battle between whether or not the courts have jurisdiction over a president's foreign policy moves vis-a-vis El Salvador, also vis-a-vis illegal immigration. Now, the administration claims Garcia is a member of the MS-13 gang.
Well, as it turns out, we've got a decent history of the immigration court trial timeline. In 2011, he entered into the U.S. illegally. In 2019, he got nabbed with a bunch of MS-13 members who identified him as being a high-ranking MS-13 member. He was arrested and brought to immigration court. He wanted a bond, and the government said, no, he's a threat. He denied it, and the judge made a ruling. The determination that the respondent is a gang member appears trustworthy and is supported by the other evidence on the record, namely information contained in the gang field interview sheet. Although the court is reluctant to give evidentiary weight to the respondent's clothing as an indication of gang affiliation, the fact that a past, proven, and reliable source of information verified the respondent's gang membership, rank, and gang name is sufficient to support that the respondent is a gang member. And the respondent has failed to present evidence to refute that assertion. Last December, he went in front of an appeals court, and the appeals court said, no, yeah, we think he's a gang member too. He requested a stay on the deportation to El Salvador because he was afraid of being a target of gang violence in the country, not because he wasn't a gang member at all. When MS-13 was designated a terrorist organization, those associations affirmed and confirmed by the appeals court meant that he lost a lot of the rights that he would have otherwise had, especially under the Alien Enemies Act. What's going on here is I think the Supreme Court is trying to thread the needle between giving you judiciary a warning saying, hey, yo, you need to understand your boundaries, and then trying to make sure that it doesn't look weak in the court of public opinion when it comes to handling the executive branch. But I'm interested, man, how do you guys feel about this ruling? Do you think he was or wasn't a gang member, man? And hey, if you like the content, like, subscribe, and I'd appreciate it if you share the video with someone you know, man. Thanks for being here. You guys rock, and I'll see you on the next one.